We are here for the 7th Dennis Irvine Lecture, sponsored by the University Council of Jamaica.
Let me acknowledge Professor Colin Giles, University Council of Jamaica member, and this evening's moderator, Mrs. Althea Heron, Executive Director of the UCJ as well, board chair, board members who are here from UCJ, Mr. Pat Tomlinson, country leader of IBM, Mr. Peter McCarthy, Dean of Engineering and Applied Technology, CMU, Professor Daniel Kaur, Professor of Computer Science, UWI-Mona, and I see his name on the screen there. Sounds like you're going to be the featured speaker to convince all of us, right, of the goodness of AI, all right. Dr. Ruth Baker Gardner, Lecturer of Library and Information Studies at UWI-Mona, specially invited guests, lecturers, professors, teachers, students, and I see our very own Darian Henry back there. Yes? No? You're still at Mopay Community College, right? Okay, good. And I see a childhood friend in the back, Rose Johnson. We went to high school together. Good to see you. But why are you at the back of the class? So thank you for inviting me to the 7th Dennis Irvine Lecture and Panel Discussion under the auspices of the University Council of Jamaica, UCJ. This lecture series, in the name of one of the Caribbean region's distinguished academics, provide a platform for the articulation and examination of emerging trends and issues that are likely to have an impact on our outlook and our operations. This evening, as you know, the focus is on artificial intelligence and its application in higher education, quality assurance of AI-based learning, and ethical considerations, among other things. As with many innovations, AI has been greeted, as you know, with some skepticism, some controversy, and wariness of its usage. At the same time, there's recognition of its transformative power across various industries and sectors, most notably in education. This global phenomenon has spurred concerted efforts worldwide within organizations, countries, and tech giants to harness AI's potential to revolutionize education. So UNESCO, for instance, is guiding its member states to embrace AI technologies to realize the ambitious Education 2030 agenda. The World Economic Forum envisions AI as a tool to create more equitable education systems. Countries such as Singapore and India are at the forefront of AI integration in their education systems, and tech giants such as Microsoft are diligently developing AI-based learning tools and services. Today's theme, artificial intelligence, a paradigm shift for quality assurance in higher education. And if you will note, it did not end with a question mark. This is like a statement that it is indeed a paradigm shift, whether we want to believe it or not. And it points to its paramount importance, delving into AI's profound implications and opportunities in enhancing education while ensuring that ethical standards are upheld. The application of AI in higher education resonates deeply with all of us in academia. AI introduces personalized and adaptive approaches that cater to the unique needs of each student and has revolutionized the teaching and learning landscape as shared by many teachers at the primary and secondary level. And I believe we're just tippy-toeing into it right now, that there is a whole lot more to be discovered. However, the issue of quality assurance in higher education is fundamental to our accreditation standards. Here, artificial intelligence emerges as a potent tool, offering the potential for substantial improvements. AI could usher in a new era of enhanced overall education quality in Jamaica through its ability to automate the assignment of educational programs and ensure their alignment to rigorous standards, thus exploring the seamless integration of AI into the policies and regulations governing higher education. And this becomes an imperative as ethical considerations with the use of AI remain at the forefront. Considering that it is not merely about harnessing technology, but also about its responsible and ethical use, and I've said that word like several times over the last few minutes, with due respect for the rights and privacy of Jamaican students and educators, we must establish comprehensive policies and, yes, that dreaded word, regulations, that guide the development and usage of AI in education. And I know when new technologies burst on the scene, and you mentioned the word regulation, everybody recoils. But if you look back in history, you will see that regulations have to follow. Because you have the renegade people out there. Think about the internet that we use. There are regulations, even though we think of it as the wild west, but there are regulations as to what you can do and cannot do, and you can get arrested for doing certain things. So these regulations should encompass data privacy, algorithm transparency and accountability. Transparency should be at the core of AI deployment in education, making Jamaican students, educators and stakeholders aware of how AI is being employed and how it affects their educational experiences. Additionally, we should seek to ensure that the AI does not exacerbate existing educational disparities. We should also take steps to provide equitable access to AI-enhanced educational resources and opportunities for all Jamaican students. And you'll be happy to know that we are already equipping them with devices, broadband connectivity, laptops, labs, and all of that, so that they have no restriction for when, I guess, that time comes. I guess it's here now. Colleagues, the future of education is a topic close to all of our hearts as I look around the room. And AI is undeniably one of the emerging driving forces in shaping that future. As educators, we must prepare our students for the ever-evolving job market, equipping them with the skills and knowledge they need to thrive in this new era of technology. Our distinguished panel for today's discussion includes experts who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table. Professor Daniel Kaur, Dr. Ruth Baker-Gardner, Mr. Pat Tomlinson, and Mr. Peter McCarthy. With your respective perspectives, I'm confident that we will engage in a thought-provoking and insightful conversation that will influence the future of higher education in our region. In closing, I wish to assure you that the ministry is committed to exploring how to support initiatives that help to determine how AI use should be treated among our various educational institutions. Also, for the guests who are here, the 7th Dennis Irvine Lecture and panel discussion promises to enrich our discourse, guiding us towards a future where education quality and ethical dimensions are upheld in the AI era. Thank you so much. And was that written by AI?
I'd like to just invite the panel members to join us at the front.
Ladies and gentlemen, are you hearing me? Good evening. Now, my expertise is in academic integrity. And I just want to share with you briefly. So the arrival of ChatGPT caused significant stir in academia, as there has been heightened concern over possible impact of academic integrity, caused by AI. So ChatGPT has the potential to create original text, as we just saw demonstrated. How original that is something we can question. And students can possibly use it to complete assignments. That is something we are quite aware of. Now, every educator in this room gives a response when I say plagiarism. Every single one. So we have a cheating problem in the Caribbean. Now, the extent of it is not yet known. Research is just beginning to emerge in that area. And so, because we already have a challenge, what AI has done is that it has actually magnified the challenge. It's another tool that our students who desire to cheat can use to cheat. But the positive side of AI is that it has caused increased focus on academic integrity, which for me is a good thing. So there are quality assurance agencies such as the Tertiary Education Quality and Standards Agency in Australia, and they are very, very concerned. Also, UNESCO states that the main challenge to higher education with regards to AI is academic integrity. And I found it interesting in the UNESCO document that was the first point that UNESCO highlighted. So that is what draws a response. So yes, AI will have implications in all sectors, but when it comes to education, what immediately comes to mind is how do we now cross this border, this barrier between academic integrity and AI without people falling through the cracks. Because certainly you don't want a doctor going to med school who AI did most of his work for him. And then that doctor wakes up tomorrow morning to do open heart surgery on you. That has serious implications. So accreditation agencies as vanguards are expected to ensure that institutions do what they are expected to do and achieve maximum results. It is therefore expected that there will be a good match between AI, in this context, academic integrity, and accreditation. All right? This relationship was established a decade ago. So the field of academic integrity is new. It has not yet begun to impact the Caribbean in a significant way. Australia is the world leader. Our developed countries are forging ahead. But certainly the Caribbean is now establishing a presence on the academic integrity stage. And so, if we don't pay attention to integrity, our degrees are worth nothing. We are in an education export market, unfortunately. Our people are packing up and leaving in droves. And so the quality of our systems within the Caribbean, extremely important. All we need is one big bad case of academic misconduct and we lose our edge in the education market. Right now, our degrees are taken across the world and they are valuable, especially if they bear certain kinds of logos. And so, UCJ identifies plagiarism as one of those important items to look for when accreditation is done. What we're suggesting is that UCJ expand that to academic integrity to include this focus on AI. When ChatGPT came about, what those established institutions were doing was that they were using their academic integrity structures to manage the challenge of AI. So if you go on their academic integrity webpage, you see some information, some ways, some policies of dealing with with artificial intelligence. They are both AI, so sometimes I get them a little bit mixed up. So the focus now has to be expanded to AI. In this context, artificial intelligence. So accreditation agencies stand at a very influential positions. They impact policy. And I have been arguing, I've been suggesting that what we need in the Caribbean are academic integrity policies. One, regional policy, since we have regional institutions. National policies for every territory. And institutional policies in every institution at both the secondary and the tertiary level. And within that, we can take care of the academic integrity challenges posed by AI within this context. So I'm closing. No longer can students be warned not to plagiarize, as this is now the old game. We all know. In the new game, where we educate students, we give them an understanding of the concept of authorship. So they know that when AI generates something, they are not the author. So they need to understand the whole concept of authorship. They need to understand the importance of academic integrity and how and when to use artificial intelligence tool. We need some of what Professor Kaur spoke about today. Our students need to hear it. They need to hear that ChatGPT does not always generate the correct answer. They need to hear that. And so we are here today to say education for academic integrity policies, teaching students about academic integrity will become a defining feature of our education system to cope with the challenges posed by AI. I close with an email I received this morning. This came from a student who took part in an online academic integrity course, which is part of a research I'm currently working on. She says, "Hi Doc, good evening. I am letting you know that you have officially spoiled my academic life in a good way this semester. I was in a real bind, but I made the right decision and I felt glad that I did afterwards. All of my work to date has been my own and I just cannot bring myself to even share in an unauthorized way because of the exposure to your sessions. Within the Caribbean, as we seek the solutions, artificial intelligence is the game changer, no doubt about that. We embrace AI with integrity." Thank you.
I want to start with a story. I graduated here from the University of the West Indies before most of you were born. And I went to Canada to do a master's degree in computer science. And I'll never forget the first thing the dean said to me was that as an international student, you have to do some remedial courses before you get into the main. And I said, no. I looked at those courses and I said, no, not doing those. Because of the strength of the program that we had here, I said we covered those things. At UWI, we had a solid program. So he said, can you get me the curriculum and the text that you use before they could waive? So we didn't have email those days, so I got the curriculum and then he said, you're right, the quality of the program is fantastic, we'll waive those prereqs. And he said, don't feel offended. He said, we take the best people at Technical University of Nova Scotia, now part of Dalhousie. And he said that it's an indictment on the university if after taking those folks, they do not graduate at the end of the tenure. So they have to make sure that they are prepared. And so he said, don't feel offended. And I said, unfortunately, I felt offended because I felt that that coming from Jamaica, but he said, no, it's not just Jamaica. They have a lot of international students from China, from India, all over, and they all have to do it. And I think it points to what we talk here about portability to be recognized outside of Jamaica, and that is why the quality assurance process is so very important. And there's also another issue regarding credibility so that employers and other institutions can be confident in the certification. One of the things, and the minister is here, years ago, IBM was looking to establish a center of competency outside of the US. We have those in India and in South America. And Jamaica and Costa Rica were shortlisted. And one of the things that the IBM Global Organization said, apart from the cost of labor, it was the talent pool. Because when you have a center of you're gonna have people come and go. You have to make sure that there's a talent pool in there. And they whittled us down from, I think they started with 8, and then it came down to Jamaica. And my God, I fought. But then I think we lost to Costa Rica. So we can't take the quality assurance in isolation. But there is something we have to pay attention to, and we spoke about using AI as an example. And I know you spoke about generative AI, but we also want to talk about predictive AI, because one of the things you have to do in terms of quality assurance is making sure that the students you're taking in is of the quality that can go through the program successfully, which is part of what they were saying to me in Canada. And this is a big area where predictive AI can assist. But then if that data is not correct, for lack of a better word, then you could have bias in the prediction. And it's an area that I know you covered it, but it's an area that I want us to be very careful. And I just want to flip there. There are some other notes, but I want to focus on the area of AI ethics. Over time, 80% of AI POCs, those get stalled in testing, and I'm talking POCs, proof of concepts, because typically you do a proof of concept before you roll out into production. They get stalled because people do not trust the results. And I want to talk about some bias in real life and just give 3 examples. There are some others in healthcare, in law enforcement. But Amazon stopped using a hiring algorithm after finding out that it favored applicants based on words like executed or captured, which were more commonly found in men's resumes. And so men were getting, because whoever trained those models put heavy weights on those terms. And we love those aggressive terms, captured, executed, as men. Biases in research engine. Independent research at Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh revealed that Google's online advertising system displayed high-paying positions to males more often than women. This is real. And again, it comes to the training of the models. Now, image generation, you spoke earlier on about Midjourney. When asked to create images of people in specialized professions, it showed both younger and older people, but the older people were always men, reinforcing gender bias of the role of women in the workplace. So again, I want to close by just talking about how important this issue of ethics. And I think one of the things, by the way, in IBM, before you touch anything in AI, the first course you have to do is ethics, AI ethics. And it's one of the things I remember when I was here, we did use of English and development of civilization, tell you how old I am as mandatory. And I think we should make it mandatory for AI ethics based on where we are now. But 5 pillars: fairness. How can we ensure that it's fair to everyone? And the minister speak about legislation. So, these are some of the things we'll have to look at. Explainable. What are the data set that we use to ensure that there is no bias? What methods? What's the expertise? Did we just pick some guy off the road to train the models? Robustness. Is the data safe? Nowadays, with cybersecurity, what if I get the opportunity to inject some malicious data that can skew the outcome? And transparency in terms of the data being available for people to learn about the model. And then finally, data privacy is something that's dear to us. The act comes into effect later on this year. So I want to just cap it there because, again, I want to leave time for the discussion. And thanks so much. I learned a bit, and I have a Dr. Core. You know why? He didn't mention that it was IBM's Deep Blue that beat Kasparov. He also didn't mention that it was IBM's Watson that beat the champions in Jeopardy. We've been at this thing for a long time, and so we're now moved on to a foundation model sitting on top of generative AI, and that's something that we can talk about because it's very exciting, not just for business, but for universities as well.
So, Professor Kaur, in using ChatGPT, I think what I understood you to be saying is that the output that we get as answers to the questions, or how we interrogate it, sounds like it's unique. You won't be able to find it on the internet. And if that's the case, where's the cheating? And you may have title to that. So where is the cheating? As the other panelists is suggesting.
That is actually exactly the point I was making, that trying to define what is cheating is going to be harder than we are accustomed to. Because up until now, what would have been deemed inappropriate is to take somebody else's idea from somewhere else and not attribute it. But what we're faced with, and by the way, just as a point of order, the examples I showed you were Bard, not ChatGPT, although the performance I was describing was ChatGPT. I just did that for diversity. But that is the question that is in front of us. How do you actually define what's not allowed? And that's why I made a point that a part of the responsibility of our education institutions will be to be very deliberate about defining what's not okay. So when you give your students those assignments, if you have a degree to which it's okay to use the AI, if that's what you want, you need to be explicit. If there are things that you want them to declare when they do use it, you need to be explicit about that. And in fact, one of the things that I've done, for example, in my own course, is I've said to my students, you're free to use it. Here's how I want you to report when you have done so. And this is just something that, it's a work in progress. It's a work in progress that I will share with my department colleagues, and we will eventually come to a position. But at this point, I had 3 categories, sort of, if you just simply used it just to get one sentence or maybe to polish up something, then it's okay to just tell me that's what you did. But if you had to use it a lot of times, I want to know about that, because part of how you're using it is what I'm checking if my assessment exercise is actually serving its purpose. I need to understand what you're thinking about. And so by looking at the various prompts that you attempted, I can get some idea of what you were trying to get from the tool. But that's, here's the challenge. We don't know ahead of time how many times they're gonna have to ask. We don't know ahead of time how easy or difficult it's gonna be to respect what you tell them to do. What if they could give you 10 pages of attempts because they spent 4 hours trying and trying and trying and trying. And maybe I don't want all of those. This is a work in progress, and I think we have to be deliberate about it. But the onus is on institutions first to define what the rules are. You can't accuse a student of breaking the rules if you didn't make it clear what those rules are.
We're keeping artificial intelligence, but we are supplementing it with augmented intelligence. Because what we're finding, and we've spoken to tons of folks in the workforce, they do not see jobs, a lot of jobs will morph, they'll change. But they're seeing this as something to augment what you do in the workforce. So we think artificial intelligence have morphed into what we're looking at now as augmented intelligence. Because to your point, it is, how do you get that information to augment what you're looking? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
Before you take another question,
Okay.
I'd like to respond to the minister's question that was posed to Professor Kaur.
Okay, sure.
Professor Kaur spoke about rules, and that is why policies are so important. He spoke about policies in his presentation. Whether or not cheating has occurred, will depend on an institution's definition of cheating. Right? How do you define it? Right? So can I penalize a student for using ChatGPT if I did not specify in my assessment that it should not be used, and I don't have a policy that speaks to that? So the policy environment becomes, because all of what we want to do, how we operate around here, needs to be written down, needs to be set out somewhere where we can all go and check that this is what is done here. And so that part of it becomes very important.
Sorry, Darian Henry, Montego Bay Community College. They say I'm principal. My original question was really about how we can reimagine teacher education, because in 50 to 100 years, we're going to be contending with augmented education. But I have to flip back to my original thought-provoking question about academic integrity. And my question is really two-pronged to both yourself, Dr. Kaur, and Dr. Ruth Baker Gardner. And I know Dr. Baker Gardner is very passionate. I've read part of her work, very and deeply passionate. But my question really is, how do you see notions of plagiarism and cheating changing in this era of generative AI, particularly as we thrust towards augmented education?
Students' perspective of cheating has not changed, but the tools have. So initially they copied from the textbook. Then there was contract cheating. So now we have just moved into an area where I no longer have to pay somebody, I just go to ChatGPT and it's free. So, and that is why my focus has predominantly been on education. And I made some discoveries in that online course, that research I ran during summer, that will bowl every educator in this room out of the wall. The levels of cheating that happen in our classroom. I gave them a pretest on their knowledge of academic integrity. And I said to them several times, remember, you're doing a test, so I expect you to be honest. And the student was there with our mic open, not realizing, asking Google to define academic integrity. What I am saying is that we're dealing with people. And from a lot of them, and Dr. Madden sat in that course as one of the facilitators, a lot of students don't understand certain basic concepts. What is authorship? We think that's something that's easy, but does a student clearly understand what it means? The way we talk about citation, I don't think we approach it right. We tell them that you need to cite to give credit, but I don't think that's the right way to do it. We cite because we tell them you need to cite because you need to show people that you know the people in your area who are the giants. You stand on the shoulders of the experts. That's a different take. It might sound similar, but it's a different take. That encourages students to come to a better understanding of some practices. We have done a very bad job of teaching. We put plagiarism over there, writing and citing over there. It's a wholesome approach that I'm encouraging. And I actually tried that wholesome approach during summer for a whole month. Intensive summer course. And students were writing papers for others. They were writing that in their reflection. And they didn't know that that was wrong. So did we at any time sit our students down in a wholesome way and teach them about academic integrity? One of the things I've found out since I've done all of this research is that when I say academic integrity up here, everybody hears plagiarism. And that's not only students, I'm talking about lecturers too. I say academic integrity. Everybody, when I examine those 17 plagiarism policies from across universities of the Caribbean, the plagiarism policies were plagiarizing. and so we put all of this on students when we ourselves have not gotten it right.
Thank you very much, Dr. Baker Francis.
So what I'm saying, a wholesome approach with education, sanctions are still there, but the sanctions are secondary. Educate, and our educators need to be educated.
Perhaps it's not academic integrity that is under threat at all, but exams and how we set exams for students. Perhaps the time has come for us to really shift away from lab-style exam to performance-based assessment, to problem-based assessment, to performance tasks, and very little pen and paper in a hot sweatshop. And that in itself will challenge students to become analytical. I am telling the truth. At some very, very high level, I would have sat some exams that warranted more facts than my mental acuity, than my analytical skills. Force you to recall too many things. And in my estimation, in this age of so many tools, students really need to draw on them. How they draw on them, how they interrogate them, how they analyze and sift them is more important than recalling that 2 + 2 = 5. Oh, it's 4.
I'm David White, head of School of Computing at University of Technology, Jamaica. Professor Corey, I truly enjoyed your presentation and the thoughts from the panel. I wanted to just throw 2 things, ask you to comment on 2 things. First, as an academic, I think the previous speaker just hit the nail on the head. What we do, for instance, in my own school where I teach, I ask the students to construct or to design. Those are the words I use, because as a School of Computing, we literally have persons saying to us, give us persons who can work with the generative AI and the other tools, the data analytics tools and so on. So we actively encourage the students to use it. We say, look, work with Bard, work with ChatGPT, modify them so when you go to a company, that it can be tailored to that company. UTech is actually working on a policy, can't say too much, but the draft actually does speak to, if you use it, right, then you have to state it, right, and state how you used it, and of course deal with things like the bias and so on. But the other thing I want to mention and ask you to comment on, there are tools though, where it is. So as I said, I've been saying to my staff, start to use the construct and the design, and when they come before you, instead of the traditional pen and paper exam, let them come and stand in front of you and defend how they did the work. So even if they use Bard or ChatGPT or one of the others, they have to say, okay, how did you synthesize all of this into the, how do you use it to get the final result? But the other thing, Prof. Core, is there are some tools like Turnitin. UTech has Turnitin.com, and although that has been beaten, right? But if you use it creatively, and GPT-0, one of the things is that the AI has a way of writing, and there are tools that can pick up that this was written by an AI. Of course, it can also be beaten too, but it is a tool that can be helpful to lecturers, to see if an AI played a role in writing the answer.
To touch on the first point about getting students to come and demonstrate the competence, that's perfectly legitimate. I don't know how you're going to do it for a class of 200 plus students. That's a different problem. You can definitely do it for a class of 30, right? We'll have to find creative ways to deal with that. In the context of the world that we're in, I actually think that identifying it. So the question put to me was about plagiarism specifically and how that's going to evolve. But I think plagiarism is an easy thing, it's defined. And it's an easy thing to define what is wrong, how you've committed it. Where I think things are going to get real murky, in fact, in this case, maybe it's a departure from something that Dr. Baker Gardner is saying, and that is, she's making a point that is actually very clear when you have authored something. And I would posit that where we are going is going to blur those lines. You can currently write something, you know that English is not your first language, you write it and you give it to ChatGPT or Bard and say, make this sound better. And it does a wonderful job of fixing the English for you. Is that okay? Is that cheating? What is that? And I think where the world is going is that that's not cheating. That's okay, you're fixing your grammar, it's your thoughts, but it's okay. But at what point do you draw the line? Where is it okay to have it purely generated, everything you hand that in as your work? Is that really your work? I think, and I don't know the answer. And I don't think anybody right now has a final answer. But it is something that we have to contemplate. And therefore, it actually makes it a little bit harder to figure out how we're going to define those rules so that we can then regulate them and enforce them. The second point you asked about the detection software, zero GPTs and so on. My personal take on those are money-milking engines. Now here's what I would say to you. If you are an institution, here's the fear that you have. Your responsibility is to put in mechanisms to defend your academic integrity policies. So the onus and the burden is going to be on you, and those vendors are going to come to you and say, you don't want your students to be cheating, do you? Look, we can sell you this product that will catch them. And if you turn them away and say, no, I don't want to spend, then they go and say, well, yeah, that means you're not really defending your academic integrity, and boy, I don't know if you can really be trusted. And they put that fear of doubt in you, and you say, well, I'm going to just spend and do it. But here's the problem, as you alluded to in your question. So right now, Zero GPT can catch even GPT-4. And what it does is it gives you a score. So you give it the text to assess, and it will give you a score. Say like 99% chance this was written by GPT. Guess what happens when you give it something written by the human? It says a 98% chance it was written by GPT. So you have like a 1% difference. Now, they will tell you that their margin of error is good enough, you can trust that difference. My turnaround to that would be to say to them, okay, if a student who gets flagged under false positive sues us, will you pay the bill? And I think you can put it to them that way. If you're willing to stand behind your product that you will take on the liability of a false positive, then fine, I will pay for your product. And see how much of them stand up behind that. Because, as an example, Zero GPT right now fails to detect Bard, for example. It scores like 70%. That's the number I'm hearing, ballpark. So while it's great at GPT, because the transformer engine behind Bard is a totally different one, it's not exactly catching those. And so, as end users, we out here, we are victims of these vultures. That's how I put it. And they play on your fears, because okay, they're making up money. But I would put it to you that it's a a cat and a mouse game that you perpetually will be chasing. And what they will do is ever telling you that, well, since the new version of GPT came out, you don't need to pay for the license to upgrade to the next version so we can catch the next version. And it will be it's like viruses. And the virus catching software is a perpetual check that they're looking. So I would suggest we try and resist it.
Thank you so much. Very interesting comments. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been a very stimulating conversation, and the conversation has really just begun. There's a lot more to be said. There's a lot more to do. I implore you to continue the conversation. That's the most important thing I want to leave with you this evening. As Professor Kaur said, we are not late, and let us make use of the opportunity.